On October 15, 2025, a team of soldiers and federal agents swarmed a Ciudad Juarez hotel, capturing Leonardo Martinez Vera, known as El Pato, after a 9-month binational manhunt. Authorities claim they finally stopped the Sinaloa Cartel's most wanted border boss. Yet his chokehold on the 90-mile Juarez corridor had already turned a city of 1.5 million into a war zone of daily killings and billion-dollar trafficking. The official version says justice was served. But how did one man wield so much power? And what really brought him down when so many others failed? This is the untold story of how authorities finally caught Sinaloa's most wanted boss, and why the stakes are far higher than the headlines suggest. Narrow artery. The Juarez Valley stretches for 90 miles along the Rio Grande, linking the Mexican city of Ciudad Juarez to the border at El Paso, Texas. This corridor is more than a line on a map. It is a narrow artery where geography, commerce, and violence intersect. Urban edge. On the Mexican side, the city of Juarez rises from the desert, home to nearly 1.5 million people. Its skyline is marked by factories, highways, and the constant movement of trucks and trains heading north. Across the river, El Paso stands as one of the busiest land crossings in the United States, a gateway through which billions of dollars in goods and untold quantities of illicit drugs pass each year. Unforgiving land. The land itself is unforgiving. The Rio Grande carves a shallow, winding path, bordered by scrub and dust. To the south, the sprawl of Juarez presses up against the border fence, neighborhoods and industrial parks blending into the desert. Out east, the corridor narrows into the Juarez Valley, a patchwork of small towns, farms, and rural roads that run parallel to the river. This is the terrain that has made the region a magnet for smugglers and a battleground for rival cartels. Every mile of road, every crossing point, every warehouse carries its own risks and rewards. History remains. In 2010, Juarez was known as the most dangerous city on earth. That year alone, more than 3,000 people were murdered, an average of over 8 killings every single day. The violence was not random. It was the result of a relentless struggle for control over this strategic corridor. Whoever controlled the Juarez Valley controlled the flow of drugs, money, and people into the United States. Economic covers. The city's position at the border has always shaped its fate. The factories and rail yards that drive the legal economy also offer cover for illegal shipments. The same highways that connect Juarez to the rest of Mexico serve as lifelines for traffickers moving cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl northward. Each shipment that crossed the valley brought new revenue to the cartels and new dangers to the people living in their shadow. Maps tell part. Maps of the region tell part of the story. A dense urban core pressed against the border, a river that offers both barrier and opportunity, and a valley that has become the most fought over real estate in northern Mexico. The numbers are stark. 90 miles of contested territory, a city of 1.5 million, and a death toll that once stunned the world. This is the ground where El Pato built his empire, and where authorities would eventually close in. For residents of the Juarez Valley, cartel control was not an abstract threat. It was a daily reality that shaped every decision. Under El Pato's rule, the so-called plaza tax became a fact of life. Every business, from corner taco stands to trucking companies, faced monthly demands for payment. Refusal often meant intimidation, violence, or worse. A vendor in central Juarez recalled, "Every month they taxed us. Every week they threatened us. The police were afraid to come to our street." La Melliza, the tactical cell led by Martinez Vera, enforced these rules with precision and brutality. They operated checkpoints along rural roads and at entry points to small towns, monitoring who came and went. Local shopkeepers describe men arriving in armored vehicles, collecting envelopes of cash, and warning that any sign of cooperation with outsiders would be punished. For many, the threat was not just financial. Extortion was paired with kidnappings and disappearances, especially when payments were late or information was suspected to have leaked. Families in the Sierra Tarahumara spoke of sons recruited under threat, daughters taken for ransom, and entire communities forced to flee after a single night of gunfire. The reach of La Melliza extended beyond businesses. School teachers in Guadalupe y Calvo reported that armed men sometimes appeared at school gates, pressuring them to identify children from families who had refused to pay or who were suspected of talking to authorities. In some villages, the only vehicles on the roads belonged to the cartel. Residents learned to recognize the sound of their engines and to disappear indoors when they passed. Security services and local officials referred to Martinez Vera as the principal generator of violence in Chihuahua, a phrase that, for those living under his control, meant a constant fear. Homicide statistics only hinted at the true cost. Behind every number was a family forced to choose between silence and survival. The plaza tax system, enforced with military discipline and public displays of power, turned entire neighborhoods into sources of revenue and intelligence for the cartel. As the years passed, the sense of isolation deepened. Police patrols grew rare, and when violence flared, authorities often arrived only after the fact, if at all. Residents described the sound of gunfire at night, the sudden closure of a business, the empty seats in classrooms. The cartel's grip was not just economic or territorial, but psychological. For many, hope became a kind of risk, and trust in outsiders faded with every extortion note and every missing neighbor. This was the world that intelligence analysts would come to study in detail, the everyday consequences of a criminal regime that treated communities as assets and threats as opportunities. The plaza tax was more than a financial scheme. It was the engine behind La Melliza's dominance, and the reason so many lived in fear long before the manhunt ever began. In January 2025, the rules of engagement changed overnight. The White House announced that Mexican drug cartels, including the Sinaloa organization, would be classified as foreign terrorist organizations. The State Department designation, finalized in February 2025, gave intelligence agencies and law enforcement a new legal foundation. Surveillance, financial tracking, and intelligence gathering that once required layers of approval were now authorized under the same framework used for global terrorist threats. Inside the National Counterterrorism Center in Virginia, analysts who had spent years studying jihadist cells began reviewing encrypted messages and movement patterns of Sinaloa operatives. Satellite time normally allocated to Middle East targets was reassigned to monitor safe houses in Chihuahua and Durango. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Defense Joint Task Force, North, and the State Department Diplomatic Security Service received new tasking orders, allowing them to fuse criminal intelligence with counterterrorism data streams. The legal shift meant that information could move faster between agencies, and that evidence collected under counterterrorism authorities could be used to pursue cartel leaders in court. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard addressed the change directly. "We will not allow cartel gangs who target Americans to roam freely, whether in the United States or across the border in Mexico," she said in a January press briefing. Behind closed doors, her team at the National Counterterrorism Center began preparing for what they called the moment to strike. Task force leaders coordinated with their Mexican counterparts, offering technical support, pattern analysis, and real-time intelligence. The surge in resources was immediate and visible. Intercepts of cartel communications increased. Financial investigators traced money flows through dozens of banks and cryptocurrency wallets. Informant networks inside La Melliza were expanding. The Foreign Terrorist Organization designation also brought legal complications. Mexican officials voiced concerns about sovereignty and the risk of retaliatory violence. Some policymakers in Mexico City worried that treating cartels as terrorists could blur the line between law enforcement and military action, raising questions about jurisdiction and civilian safety. But for United States agencies, The new authorities meant they could act with unprecedented speed and coordination. The manhunt for Martinez Vera became a test case for this strategy, a demonstration of what could be accomplished when the full weight of the United States counterterrorism apparatus was focused on a single cartel boss. Within weeks, the task force had mapped Martinez Vera's network, tracked his communications, and begun dismantling the financial structures that kept La Mayiza supplied and armed. What had once been a slow, bureaucratic process now moved with the urgency of a national security threat. The policy shift turned the stakes of the Juarez Valley from a regional crisis into a matter of international mandate, setting the stage for a manhunt that would span 9 months and cross 2 countries. Inside the National Counterterrorism Center, analysts tracked every signal, every financial transfer, and every encrypted message moving through the Juarez Valley. The Fusion Cell brought together specialists from FBI, Joint Task Force North, the State Department Diplomatic Security Service, and Texas DPS, all working with Mexican military intelligence. Their toolkit was vast. Satellite time diverted from overseas targets, signals intelligence intercepts, financial tracing software, and informant reports from inside La Mayiza's own ranks. For the first time, United States and Mexican agencies shared raw intelligence in real time, mapping safe houses and tracking the movement of cartel vehicles across city blocks and rural roads. In mid-October, a pattern emerged. Satellite imagery showed unusual nighttime traffic near 2 homes on the outskirts of Ciudad Juarez. Intercepted radio chatter matched the voice signatures of known La Mayiza lieutenants. Financial logs flagged bulk cash withdrawals and cryptocurrency transfers linked to shell companies in El Paso. The Fusion Cell flagged these sites as priority targets. Within hours, Mexican Army and National Guard units assembled in staging areas, briefed with information that just days earlier would have been locked behind diplomatic channels. Before dawn on October 15th, armed convoys rolled out, headlights off, guided by coordinates supplied through the intelligence pipeline. At the first safe house, soldiers breached reinforced doors and swept the rooms. They found abandoned bunks, scattered documents, and a cache of long guns, rifles, ammunition, encrypted radios, and armored vehicles left behind in a hurry. Communications equipment was seized for forensic analysis. At the second location, tactical teams uncovered more weapons and evidence of recent occupation, but the primary target remained out of sight. The arsenal matched what investigators had come to expect from La Mayiza: military-style rifles, armored SUVs, and encrypted communications, all pointing to the Cabrera-Sarabia supply chain. Each weapon was tagged for evidence, each radio and phone handed off to cyber teams searching for the next clue. Even without Martinez Vera in custody, the raids dealt a blow to his operational capacity. Vehicles impounded, safe houses compromised, and trusted lieutenants forced to scatter. As the sun rose over Juarez, the Fusion Cell's work shifted from static surveillance to live tracking. Analysts relayed updates to field commanders, who recalibrated their perimeter and redirected plainclothes units to hotels and business districts flagged in the latest intelligence sweep. The task force now operated with a sense of urgency and coordination rarely seen in cross-border investigations. Every agency had a role: United States satellites and intercepts, Mexican tactical units on the ground, prosecutors preparing for what would come next. The groundwork was set for the final move. The man they called El Pato was running out of places to hide. The takedown. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the operation reached its breaking point. Surveillance teams watched as Leonardo Daniel Martinez Vera stepped out of a downtown hotel in Ciudad Juarez, just blocks from the border. Plainclothes officers and tactical units, already in position, moved in. Martinez Vera glanced over his shoulder, spotted the agents closing in, and broke into a sprint. He cut across the sidewalk, weaving past startled pedestrians with 3 men at his heels, veteran money launderers who handled the cartel's profits and digital transactions. The chase lasted less than a city block. Chihuahua state investigators surged forward, joined by National Guard and Army soldiers. One agent lunged, catching Martinez Vera by the waist and driving him to the pavement. The three associates tried to scatter, but were quickly restrained. There was no exchange of gunfire, no drawn-out standoff. The scene unfolded in seconds. A blur of running feet, shouts, and handcuffs snapping shut. In custody. Field agents worked quickly, checking identities and searching pockets for encrypted phones and documents. The arrest was recorded on the spot and logged in the National Detention Register at 4 p.m. Officers bundled Martinez Vera and the others into armored vehicles, rushing them away before word could spread through cartel networks. For the first time in 9 months, the most wanted man in the Juarez Valley was in custody. The physical pursuit was over. Aftermath. Authorities secured the scene, bagged evidence, and prepared to transfer the detainees to a secure prosecutor's facility, setting the stage for the legal battles to come. Official record. The booking of Leonardo Daniel Martinez. Vera was entered into the National Detention Register at 4 p.m. on October 15, 2025, formalizing his status as a detainee under Mexican law. The entry listed his name, the time and place of arrest, and the initial charge, disobedience and resistance to authority. What was routine on paper carried unusual weight given the manhunt's scale and the target's profile. For the Joint Task Force, logging the arrest was not just a bureaucratic necessity, it was a safeguard against any later claims of irregularity or disappearance. The record provided a timestamp, a location, and a list of arresting authorities, anchoring the operation in official documentation that could withstand legal and political scrutiny. Tense. Inside the prosecutor's offices, the atmosphere was tense. State officials in Chihuahua moved quickly to secure Martinez Vera and his three associates, aware that delays could invite pressure from rival factions or trigger leaks to the outside. At the federal level, hesitation was evident. The Attorney General's Office, FGR, weighed the risks of immediate high-profile charges, jurisdictional disputes, concerns about evidence integrity, and the ever-present threat of cartel retaliation. Federal prosecutors debated how to proceed, wary of internal corruption and the political fallout that often follows the arrest of a cartel boss. Despite these tensions, field agents and state prosecutors pressed forward. The arrest was logged, the detainees transferred to a secure facility, and the legal process set in motion. The task force's decision to act swiftly, relying on the minor charge as a legal pretext, ensured that Martinez Vera remained in custody while more comprehensive indictments were prepared. Every step, from the moment of capture to the booking in the National Detention Register, was designed to leave a clear, unalterable trail. The hunt was over, but the legal battle was only beginning. The capture of one cartel boss exposes a new reality. U.S. counterterrorism tools now hunt traffickers as terrorists, erasing old boundaries of law enforcement. But for every leader removed, violence and power struggles can surge, reshaping lives along the border in real time. The stakes are no longer regional, but national. Justice here is a moving target, and so is the next name on the list.